My dad sold my custom gaming setup and kicked me out because my stepfamily lied. Now, their lives are a dumpster fire. All right, Reddit. So this is going to be a long one, but I need to get this off my chest. My name's Jay, male, and I am 19 now. But this story starts when I was 17, and still living in what I thought was my home, but was apparently just temporary housing. My mom died when I was 8. Cancer. Dad never really talked about it much after the funeral, just said we had to move forward and be strong. Whatever that meant to a third grader who just wanted his mom back. Dad remarried when I was 12 to this woman, Carla, female 47. She had a daughter, Maddie, female, who was also 12 at the time. From the start, it was obvious I was the outsider in this new setup, not in ways my dad would easily notice, but in all those small, everyday interactions that slowly pile up. Carla would make dinner and somehow always forget to make enough for me. She'd do laundry, and somehow my clothes would still be dirty afterward, or they'd come out with mysterious stains that weren't there before. When I'd mention it to Dad, she'd act all innocent like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I must have grabbed the wrong detergent." Maddie was a piece of work from the beginning. Typical spoiled princess type who'd learned that tears and drama got her whatever she wanted. She'd break something, blame me, and somehow I'd be the one getting lectured about taking responsibility. The worst part was how Dad handled it all. Anytime there was conflict between Maddie and me, his default was to assume I was the problem. "Jay, you're older. You should know better. Jay, she's adjusting to having a big brother. Jay, you need to be patient with her." The truth was, Dad was completely whipped by Carla. She had him wrapped around her finger so tight that he'd agree with whatever she said just to keep the peace. It didn't matter if I was right or wrong. If Carla and Maddie wanted me to be the bad guy, that's what I'd be. Dad would nod along and enforce whatever punishment they suggested, because standing up to his new wife was apparently scarier than throwing his own son under the bus. Meanwhile, Carla would stand behind him, nodding along, playing the concerned stepmom act, while throwing me these looks that made it clear she thought I was nothing but trouble. By the time I hit high school, I'd basically given up trying to be part of their family unit. I spent most of my time in my room, gaming, doing my own thing. I'd built up this sick setup over the years. PS5, custom gaming PC I'd assembled myself, dual monitors, mechanical keyboard, the works. All bought with money from my part-time job at GameStop and birthday cash from my Uncle Mark. Gaming wasn't just a hobby for me, it was my escape. I was actually pretty good too. Ranked in the top 500 in Apex Legends, had a decent following on Twitch, made some money from tournaments. While Carla and Maddie were downstairs playing Happy Family, I was upstairs building something that was actually mine. My friends at school thought I had it made. Sweet gaming setup, no parents breathing down my neck about homework, since they didn't care anyway. Basically free reign to do whatever. They didn't see the dinner table conversations where I might as well have been invisible, or how Carla would wait until Dad left for work to make her little comments about freeloaders who don't contribute to the household. Dad would occasionally make comments about me spending too much time on those games, but he never bothered to actually understand what I was doing. Never asked about the competitions I won, never cared that I was making actual money streaming, never noticed that gaming was teaching me about technology, strategy, teamwork. The house dynamic was pretty clear. Maddie was the princess who could do no wrong. Carla was the protective mother figure. Dad was the provider who worked all the time, and I was the burden they all had to tolerate. Whenever family, friends, or relatives would visit, it was like watching a performance. Carla would suddenly be super sweet to me. Maddie would act like we were best buddies, and Dad would put on this proud father act. The second people left, it was back to the usual coldness. I started spending more time at my Uncle Mark's place on weekends. He was my mom's brother, and he actually got me. He'd ask about my games, was impressed when I showed him my streaming setup, treated me like I mattered. He was the only adult in my life who seemed to remember I existed. Mark would always tell me I had a place at his house if things got too rough, but I kept thinking things would get better eventually. That maybe when I graduated, went to college, proved myself somehow, I'd finally earn a real spot in my dad's new family. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. The way Carla would whisper to Maddie when they thought I wasn't listening. How they'd stop talking whenever I walked into a room. The little smirks they'd exchange when Dad would lecture me about something. They weren't just tolerating me. They were actively plotting to get rid of me. And I was too focused on my own life to realize I was living in enemy territory. So fast forward to last spring, about 2 months before graduation. I'm 17, working part-time, keeping my grades up, basically staying out of everyone's way, and focusing on my own goals. I'd been saving money for college, had about $8,000 in an account that Dad had helped me set up when I was younger. Between my GameStop job, tournament winnings, and streaming revenue, I'd been steadily building up funds for tuition and a decent gaming setup for my dorm room. My daily routine was pretty simple: school, work, home, gaming, sleep. I'd gotten accepted to a few colleges and was planning to major in computer science. Dad seemed proud when the acceptance letters came in, which was about as close to parental approval as I ever got. Then came the day that nuked my entire life. I was upstairs in my room in the middle of a ranked match when I heard this commotion downstairs. Maddie was crying. Not unusual. She cried about everything from broken nails to homework assignments. But this was different, more dramatic. Through my headset, I could hear Dad's voice getting louder, Carla making those sympathetic mom noises she did whenever Maddie needed backup. I finished my match and took off my headphones just as Dad's footsteps started pounding up the stairs. He burst into my room without knocking, something that always pissed me off, but I'd learned not to complain about. His face was red, that vein in his forehead bulging the way it did when he was about to lose it completely. "Where's the money?" he demanded. "What money?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Don't play dumb with me, Jay." Maddie had $2,000 saved up for her senior trip, and now it's gone. She says you're the only one who knew where she kept it. I just stared at him. $2,000? Dad, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't even know Maddie had that much money saved up. She kept it in her room, in that jewelry box Grandma gave her, the same room that shares a wall with yours, the same room you walk past every day. The way he was looking at me, like I was already guilty, like my explanation was just some pathetic attempt to cover my tracks, it hit me that he'd already made up his mind before even coming upstairs. "Dad, I swear on Mom's grave, I didn't take any money from Maddie. I wouldn't even go in her room. You can check my bank account, check my wallet, whatever you want." "Your bank account?" He laughed, but not in a funny way. "You think I'm stupid? You think if you stole cash, you'd deposit it in your own account?" That's when I realized this wasn't a conversation or an investigation. This was an execution. He'd already decided I was guilty, and nothing I said was going to change his mind. "Can I at least talk to Maddie? Ask her exactly when she noticed the money was missing? If she told anyone else about it?" "You stay away from your sister," he snapped. "She's been through enough today without having to deal with you trying to manipulate her." Sister, that word always stung when he used it to describe Maddie while talking to me like I was some outsider. I tried explaining that I'd been at work during most of the time periods when the money could have gone missing, that my coworkers could verify my schedule, that I had my own money and no reason to steal from anyone. None of it mattered. Dad had made his choice, and I could see Carla standing in the doorway behind him with this satisfied look on her face, like she was watching her favorite movie. "Pack your gaming stuff," Dad said. "All of it. I'm selling it tomorrow." "What?" "Dad, no, you can't do that. I paid for that equipment with my own money. I have receipts for everything. Money you earned while living in my house, eating my food, using my electricity. Money that apparently wasn't enough for you, so you had to steal from your sister." I felt like I was in some nightmare where everyone was speaking a different language. Nothing I said was getting through to him. "Dad, please, just listen to me for 1 second. I didn't steal anything. You know me. You raised me. When have I ever stolen anything from anyone?" But as soon as I said it, I realized the problem. He didn't know me. He'd been so busy building his new family with Carla and Maddie that he'd never bothered to actually know who I was. To him, I was just this obligation left over from his first life. Someone he had to house and feed until I turned 18, but not someone he actually understood or trusted. The look in his eyes made it clear that in his mind, I'd already been tried and convicted. Now he was just carrying out the sentence. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of strangers. Dad had posted my entire gaming setup on Facebook Marketplace at like 6 a.m. By the time I got downstairs for breakfast, people were already showing up to look at my stuff. My custom PC that I'd spent months researching and building, gone to some college kid for half what the components cost. My PS5 that I'd waited in line for 4 hours to get on launch day, sold to a dad buying it for his son's birthday. My dual monitor setup, my mechanical keyboard, my gaming chair, my headset, all of it scattered to random strangers who had no idea what those things meant to me. I stood in my doorway watching people carry away pieces of my life while Dad counted cash, like he was running a garage sale. Every time I tried to say something, he'd give me this look that said, "Don't even think about it." The worst part was losing my streaming equipment. I'd been building a decent following on Twitch, had some sponsors interested in partnerships, was making enough money to actually help with college expenses. All of that vanished in one morning because of something I didn't even do. By noon, my room was empty, except for my bed, desk, and clothes. 5 years of building something that was mine. Something I was proud of. Something that gave me purpose. All gone in 4 hours. One buyer, this middle-aged dude picking up my monitors, actually asked if I was sure I wanted to sell them, because they looked barely used. Dad jumped in before I could answer, saying I was moving away for college and downsizing. The guy nodded and handed over the cash, but he kept looking at me like something wasn't right about the whole situation. I tried one more time to reason with Dad after the last buyer left. Dad, can we please just talk about this? I know you're angry, but I'm telling you the truth. I didn't take Maddie's money. This whole thing is a huge mistake. He was counting the cash from the sales, making neat piles of 20s and 50s on the kitchen counter. The only mistake, he said without looking up, was me thinking I could trust you. Your mom would be ashamed of what you've become. That line hit me like a physical punch. Using my dead mother to guilt trip me over something I didn't do. That was a new low, even for him. Don't you dare bring Mom into this, I said. And for the first time in my life, I didn't back down from confronting him. Mom would be ashamed of how you've treated me since she died. How you replaced me with Carla's family and made me feel like a stranger in my own house. Dad's face went dark. Your house? This isn't your house, Jay. This is my house where you've been allowed to live out of the goodness of my heart. And apparently that was a mistake too. Allowed to live? I'm your son. You're a thief, he said flatly. And thieves don't get to make demands. That afternoon I was sitting in my empty room trying to process what had just happened when Dad appeared in my doorway again. We need to talk about college, he said. For a second, I thought maybe he was going to help me figure out how to replace my gaming equipment, or at least acknowledge that selling everything I owned was an extreme reaction. I've been thinking about your college fund, he continued. That money was meant to give you a good start in life, to help you become a responsible adult. But after what happened yesterday, I don't think you've earned that investment. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying that $8,000 is going to pay for Maddie's senior trip and some of the other expenses you've caused this family. Thieves don't deserve college funds. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, that's my money. I saved most of it myself. You can't just take it. It's in a joint account with my name on it. I can do whatever I want with it. And what I want is for you to learn that actions have consequences. He wasn't lying. It was a joint account he'd opened in both our names when I was a kid, so technically he could take every penny and the bank wouldn't care. I just never thought he'd actually do it. What actions? I didn't do anything, but he was already walking away. Over his shoulder, he said, "You have until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. I won't have a thief in my house anymore." That was it. 17 years of being his son, reduced to a 3-day eviction notice. I called Uncle Mark that night, barely holding it together long enough to explain what had happened. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just said, "Pack whatever you can fit in my truck. I'll be there in 2 hours." When Mark showed up, Dad was waiting in the driveway like he was expecting some kind of confrontation. But Mark just helped me load my clothes and the few personal things I had left, then handed Dad a piece of paper. "My address and phone number," Mark said quietly. "In case you ever come to your senses and want to apologize to your son." Dad crumpled up the paper without looking at it. "He's not my son anymore." Mark got in his truck, looked at Dad through the driver's side window, and said something I'll never forget. "No, you're just not his father anymore." As we drove away, I looked back at the house where I'd lived for 9 years, but was never really home. Carla and Maddie were watching from the living room window, and I swear I could see them smiling. I was 17 years old with $50 in my wallet, a garbage bag full of clothes, and absolutely no idea what was supposed to happen next. Uncle Mark's place was like landing on a different planet. He lived in this small house about an hour away from my dad's suburb. Older neighborhood Marks fell into the project car category, with a 1990 Camaro that he'd been almost finished restoring for the past 5 years. Mark didn't make a big production about me showing up with my entire life in a trash bag. He just looked at the bag, looked at me and said, "Well, this is either the world's saddest laundry day, or your dad finally lost his mind completely." Then he helped me carry my stuff upstairs to what used to be his home office, shoved a pile of car magazines off the futon and said, "Welcome to Casa de Mark. Try not to judge the decorating." I fired my interior designer for having opinions. That first night, we ordered pizza from this place that apparently knew Mark's order by heart because he just called and said, "It's Mark, send the usual," and hung up. While we waited, he asked me to walk him through what had happened. "So let me get this straight," he said when I finished. "Princess Maddie claims she had $2,000 in cash just sitting around, and your dad's response was to immediately destroy your property instead of, I don't know, asking why would you steal $2,000 when you already $8,000 saved? I guess he didn't think about it that way. Your dad wouldn't think if his brain came with an instruction manual, Mark said, opening a soda. Want one? You're 17, so no drinks for you yet. But I've got Coke that'll rot your teeth just as effectively. The pizza place knew what they were doing. Extra cheese, pepperoni, and this garlic sauce that was probably illegal in most states. We sat on Mark's beat-up couch watching some action movie from the 90s, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. You know what we're gonna do tomorrow, Mark said during the movie. We're gonna fix your life. Not because I'm some hero or anything, but because your dad's an idiot and someone needs to prove that adults can actually be useful. The next morning, Mark was already dressed and drinking coffee when I came downstairs. All right, kiddo, we're gonna fix your life today. Well, start fixing it. Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were using primitive tools. We've got the internet. He spent the entire day driving me around, handling practical stuff that I didn't even know needed handling. First stop, the electronics store where he knew the manager from high school. This is my nephew Jay, Mark told the guy. He's temporarily between gaming setups due to circumstances involving family stupidity. You hiring? I got the job on the spot, mostly because Mark vouched for me, but also because I could actually answer technical questions about the products they sold. Next stop, the financial aid office at the community college. Mark had called ahead and somehow gotten us an appointment with a counselor who specialized in complicated family situations. So your dad kicked you out and took your college money, the counselor said, flipping through my paperwork. That's definitely complicated, but not uncommon. We can do what's called a dependency override. Basically treat you as independent for financial aid. If you can show proof like the eviction, bank records, that kind of thing. It'll actually open up more aid options for you. I didn't even know that was a thing, but Mark just nodded like he'd known all along. See, he said, sometimes having a terrible father is financially advantageous. It's like a scholarship for family dysfunction. By the end of the week, Mark had co-signed on a basic laptop for me. It's not a gaming rig, but it'll run Excel in disappointment. Help me set up a new bank account at a credit union where his buddy from work was a loan officer, and somehow acquired a used Xbox and monitor from a guy who owed him a favor. What kind of favor? I asked. The kind where I don't ask questions and you don't either, Mark said, hooking up the console to the TV. But I can guarantee it wasn't stolen. Probably. The Xbox wasn't much compared to what I'd lost, but it was mine, and Mark had somehow gotten it for like $50. When I started streaming again, I just streamed straight from the Twitch app on the Xbox at first, until I could afford a capture card and a basic PC to run things more smoothly. Mark would wander by occasionally and make comments like, "Is that the part where you shoot the bad guys? Or are they shooting you?" It's hard to tell from all the swearing. Mark showed support in weird ways. When I got my first paycheck from the electronics store, he took me to this sketchy used car lot and helped me negotiate for a beat-up Honda Civic that barely ran but would get me to work and school. The secret, he told the salesman, is that we're not desperate buyers. We're just broke. There's a difference. Somehow we walked away with a car for $1,200 that was listed at $2,500. The salesman looked confused, but Mark just handed him cash and said, "Pleasure doing business with someone who appreciates honesty." When I got accepted to State University, Mark's celebration was buying a case of soda and a bag of chips, then sitting on the back porch explaining why my dad was an idiot. "See, your father thinks love is about control," he said, opening his third Coke. "Your mom, God rest her soul, knew better. Love is about showing up. I show up, you show up, we eat terrible food and complain about life. That's family." He'd never say anything sentimental, but he'd do stuff like mysteriously know exactly when my streaming setup needed an upgrade and have a friend getting rid of equipment who happened to sell things for exactly what I could afford. The best example was when I started getting stressed about college applications and whether I could afford everything. Instead of giving me a pep talk, Mark just left a printout on my desk of every scholarship I was eligible for, already filled out except for my signature, with a note that said, "Sign these or I'm replacing your Xbox with a toaster." By the end of summer, I had a functional gaming setup, a reliable car, a job, college acceptance, and more practical life skills than I'd learned in 17 years of living with Dad. Not because Mark sat me down for heart-to-heart conversations, but because he just quietly handled stuff that needed handling. "You know," he said one day while we were working on the Camaro, "your dad always thought being a parent meant being in charge. But really, it just means being useful when someone needs you to be useful." Then he handed me a wrench and said, "Now help me fix this piece of Detroit garbage so we can pretend it's a real car." College started in the fall, And honestly, it was the fresh start I didn't know I needed. I was majoring in computer science at the state university, living in the dorms during the week and coming back to Marks on weekends. The independence felt incredible after years of walking on eggshells around Dad's house. My roommate Tyler was this chill dude from Oregon who was also into gaming. When he found out about my streaming background, he helped me optimize my setup and even appeared on some of my streams. Having someone who actually supported what I was doing, instead of treating it like a waste of time, made a huge difference. The coursework was challenging, but in a good way. Programming, algorithms, database design, all stuff that connected to what I'd been teaching myself through gaming and streaming. Turns out all those hours spent modding games and troubleshooting streaming software had actually been preparing me for real career skills. My professors actually seemed impressed when I could troubleshoot coding problems that stumped other students. Years of debugging game modifications and fixing streaming software crashes had given me problem-solving skills that transferred perfectly to computer science coursework. I was still working part-time at the electronics store, and between that job and slowly rebuilding my streaming audience, I was managing to cover most of my expenses. It wasn't easy, but it felt good to be supporting myself without having to depend on anyone who might hold it over my head later. I started dating this girl Emma from my database design class. She was smart, funny, actually interested in hearing about my streaming and gaming projects. When I told her about losing my original setup and having to rebuild everything, she was impressed that I'd managed to start over instead of giving up. That takes real determination, she said. Most people would have just quit. Having someone see my situation as a strength instead of a sob story was incredibly validating. My streaming was picking up momentum too. I'd focused on variety gaming with an emphasis on helping viewers learn about hardware and software optimization. The broke college student builds gaming setup from nothing angle resonated with a lot of people, and I started getting sponsorship offers again. Nothing huge, but enough to upgrade my equipment gradually and maybe save a little money for after graduation. The weird thing was, I realized I didn't miss my old life as much as I thought I would. Yeah, losing my original gaming setup sucked, and starting college with loans instead of savings was stressful. But I was happier than I'd been in years. I didn't hear from Dad at all during my first semester. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement of my birthday or holidays. It hurt sometimes, but mostly it was just quiet, like a background noise I hadn't realized was bothering me until it stopped. Mark would occasionally get updates through family members. Apparently Dad and Carla were having some issues. Maddie was struggling in school, the usual suburban drama. But he never pressured me to reach out or suggested I should forgive and forget. Your dad made his choice when he threw you out, Mark said one day, when I was wondering if I should send a Christmas card or something. If he wants to be part of your life again, he knows where to find you. But that's his move to make, not yours. The spring semester was even better. I'd hit my stride academically, my streaming channel was growing steadily, and Emma and I were getting serious. I felt like I was finally building the life I wanted instead of just surviving the life I'd been stuck with. Then, about a week before finals, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in almost a year. It was Dad. I stared at the phone for 3 rings before answering. Part of me wanted to let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. Jay? It's your dad. His voice sounded wrecked. Tired, desperate, maybe a little scared. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something. About what happened last year. Some things have come to light. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Maddie, she got arrested last week, shoplifting. But when the police searched her, they found illegal substances. When Carla and I confronted her about it, she admitted to some things. More silence from me. She'd been stealing money from around the house for months, including that $2,000 she said you took. She made the whole thing up because she needed someone to blame. I felt this weird mix of vindication and emptiness, like finally getting an apology for something that had already broken beyond repair. I know I screwed up, Jay. I should have believed you. I should have investigated before I destroyed your things. I want to make this right. Make it right how? I asked, my voice flat. Come home. I'll replace all your gaming equipment. Better stuff than you had before. We can put this behind us and be a family again. A family? I almost laughed. Dad, you kicked me out. You called me a thief. You sold my stuff and stole my college money. And now that you know the truth, you want to just reset everything? I made a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to believe Carla and Maddie instead of me. You chose to destroy my property instead of finding out the truth. You chose to throw me away instead of fighting for me. I could hear him breathing on the other end. My life got better after you kicked me out, I continued. I'm in college. I have a job. I'm with someone who actually gives a damn about me. I don't need you to fix anything. Jay, please. Carla and I are getting divorced. Maddie's situation it's bad. I'm going to be alone here. And I realize now that I threw away the only real family I had left. And there it was. He wasn't calling because he felt guilty about what he'd done to me. He was calling because his backup plan had fallen apart and he didn't want to be alone. So you want me to come back and be your emotional support, son? Fill the gap now that your perfect little family exploded? That's not. I just thought. You thought wrong. I'm not your backup plan, Dad. I'm not going to come running back just because you finally figured out who the real problems were. I hung up and immediately called Mark to tell him what happened. His response was typical. Mark, well, it only took him a year to figure out what everyone else could see from space. You want me to pick up dinner, or are you cooking tonight? Emma found me sitting on Mark's back porch an hour later, staring at my phone. Everything okay? My dad called. Wants me to come home now that he knows I didn't steal anything. How do you feel about that? Honestly? Nothing. Like he's a stranger asking me for a favor I don't owe him. She sat down next to me. That's probably healthy. But the real story wasn't that phone call. The real story was what I found out over the next few months, through Uncle Mark's neighborhood connections and some strategic social media stalking. So, roughly a year after Dad's pathetic phone call, I was back at Mark's place for the weekend when he walked in from the grocery store, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. You'll never guess who I ran into in the checkout line, he said, setting bags down on the kitchen counter. Who? Your old neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Apparently, she's got some interesting updates about your father's situation. I was home for summer break, working full-time at a tech startup I'd landed through my professor's connections. Between that job and my streaming channel hitting 25,000 followers and a few hundred paid subs, I was actually making decent money for a college student. Let me guess, I said. The divorce is getting messy? Oh, it's way better than that. Mark started unpacking groceries, clearly enjoying having gossip to share. Apparently, Carla didn't just cheat with her personal trainer. She'd been running a full operation. Your dad's business partner, the neighbor, probably half the subdivision at this point. Damn. Gets better. When your dad found out about the business partner, it nuked his accounting firm. Turns out clients don't like their financial advisor having drama with the guy handling their books. He's basically broke now. Mark pulled out his phone and showed me a Facebook post from someone in Dad's old neighborhood. It was a photo of a moving truck outside Dad's house with the caption, "End of an era." Carla got half of everything in the divorce, which wasn't much after the business collapsed, Mark continued. But here's the really good part. Maddie's situation got way worse. According to Mrs. Patterson, Maddie's drug problem had escalated to full-blown addiction. She'd been caught forging checks, stealing from neighbors, and had racked up serious debt with dealers who weren't patient about collection. She's in state prison now, Mark said. 3-year sentence for the check fraud and burglary charges. But that's not even the worst part. He showed me another screenshot. Apparently, someone had leaked a video of Maddie doing unspeakable things for drug money. The video had gone viral in their old school district. The internet is forever, Mark said with grim satisfaction. Every future employer, every potential relationship, every person who Googles her name is going to find that video. Carla had apparently burned through her divorce settlement, trying to pay lawyers and get the video removed. When that failed and the money ran out, she'd tried to get Dad to help with legal fees. He'd told her to handle it herself. So where's Dad now? Studio apartment above a laundromat. Lost the house, lost the business, lost his retirement accounts. Mrs. Patterson says he looks like he aged 10 years and 6 months. The funny thing was, none of this felt like justice or revenge to me. It just felt like watching strangers deal with consequences they'd created for themselves. These weren't my people anymore. Justice served cold, I said. Sometimes the universe handles things better than we ever could. 6 months later, I got one more phone call from Dad. This time, I let it go to voicemail. The message was short and desperate. Jay, I know you don't want to talk to me, but I'm in real trouble here. The apartment got broken into, my car's been repossessed, and I'm filing for bankruptcy. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I deleted the voicemail without responding. Emma and I got engaged that fall, not because we were in a hurry, but because we'd both realized we'd found something worth building a life around. When I told Mark, he got genuinely emotional. Your mom would be so proud of you, he said. Not just for finding Emma, but for becoming the kind of man who deserves someone like her. We're planning a small wedding after graduation. Mark's going to be my best man since he's the closest thing to a real father I've ever had. Sometimes people ask if I'm going to invite my dad. The answer is no, not because I'm still angry, but because he's not part of my life anymore. Through the gossip network, I learned Dad's bankruptcy didn't wipe out certain debts. stuff like back taxes or court judgments, so creditors were still garnishing his wages from whatever minimum wage job he'd managed to find. Maddie got out of prison last month, but was back in within 2 weeks on a parole violation. Carla's call center job barely covered rent on her studio apartment, and her reputation in their old social circle was completely destroyed. None of them had anywhere to run. Their suburban social media presence had become a cautionary tale about families that implode spectacularly. People they'd tried to impress for years were now sharing screenshots of their legal troubles and personal drama like entertainment. The best part was that I had absolutely nothing to do with their destruction. I didn't orchestrate their downfall, didn't get revenge, didn't even gloat about it publicly. They'd simply revealed who they actually were when life got challenging, and the consequences followed naturally. I learned the difference between the family you're born into and the family you choose. I chose Mark, who believed in me when I had nothing. I chose Emma, who loves me for who I am instead of who she thinks I should be. I chose friends who support my goals instead of tearing me down. Dad chose Carla and Maddie. He chose to prioritize their comfort over my well-being. He chose to throw me away rather than fight for me. Now he gets to live with those choices, just like I get to live with mine. The difference is, I'm building something lasting with people who actually value me. And from what I hear, his family's destruction is still ongoing. The universe didn't need my help. It handled everything just fine on its own. And apparently it wasn't finished yet.